One misconception regarding reincarnation is the idea that we can incarnate into lower forms. This is against the laws of nature. A spiritual pilgrim can't regress when entering the human kingdom because mind is now acquired. Reincarnation and karma help to explain the apparent inequities among people, because each of us have made ourselves what we are today by our actions in past lives. In mythology, the story of the phoenix represents the process of spiritual renewal or reincarnation. For millennia, the symbol for rebirth has been the phoenix, a mythical bird of great beauty, the only one of its kind, fabled to live 500 or 600 years in the Arabian wilderness, to burn itself on a funeral pyre and rise from the ashes in the freshness of youth and live through another cycle of years. When reduced to ashes, one glowing spark, signifying the immortal being, is supposed to remain, and from this, the new life is evolved. Now the question needs to be asked, what is it that reincarnates? And this leads us to consider the nature of the human being. According to these teachings, man is dual in nature. We have an individuality which is spiritual and permanent and has been referred to as the higher self. And we also have a personality that is material and temporary, which is called the lower self. In the Key to Theosophy, Blavatsky outlines 7 principles that constitute the nature of the human being. The first 4 are concerned with the lower self. She says they are made up of the physical body, the life or vital force, the astral or model body on which the physical body is based, and the seat of our feelings or desires. The higher self is comprised of 3 aspects: the mind, which is the connecting link between the 2 selves; the soul, which is the individualizing part of our spiritual nature; and spirit, that which is universal in us, the spark of the divine flame. Now it is critical to understand the nature of mind, because we use our mind for either spiritual or materialistic purposes, and that depends on how we aim our desire. Mind contains both reasoning and an intuition, and both are very important to develop. But it is the awakening and development of our intuitive nature that leads us to realize our divinity or our connection to the whole. There is a classic struggle between our selfish nature and our spiritual or selfless individuality. It is by overcoming our selfish nature that we come to realize the universal in us. Many of our myths are based on this classic struggle. The English refer to St. George and the dragon. The Greeks talk about the labors of Hercules, with the first one being the slaying of the lion. In Hinduism, Krishna, in order to save the children, kills the terrible demon, Agha. These are examples of the higher nature overcoming the lower self. What happens when we die? A caveat is in order here. The after-death states are extremely complicated and require much study. This is to provide you with a general picture. When we die, our personality must disintegrate, in order for our individuality or spiritual self to complete its death phases. The process goes roughly like this. When a person dies, the life force flees, and the physical body is cast off. The emotional tendencies that have formed over a lifetime need to burn off. These combine with memory fragments that have developed during that life. And this entity is what HPV called the Kama-rupa. Mediums who claim to contact the disincarnate person may actually be channeling this Kama-rupa. But this is not the true person. The true person is the individuality, which is beyond the reach of the medium. When the Kama-rupa disintegrates, the individuality is then freed and enters into a blissful and dreamlike state called Devachan, which means dwelling of the gods. This is an illusionary, solitary dream in which the individuality fulfills the highest spiritual aspirations of that earth life. The spiritual self does not interact with others or acquire karma. But while the dream is an illusion, it seems real to the individuality, just as earth life seems to us. It is a time then of assimilation of that particular life experience. Time varies in Devachan, but time is subjective. As in a dream, centuries can seem to pass in minutes. When the individuality is ready, there is a pullback towards the earth to reincarnate once again. Let me quote William Quan Judge on this point. The whole period allotted by the soul's forces being ended in Devachan, the magnetic threads which bind it to earth begin to assert their power. The self wakes from the dream, it is borne swiftly off to a new body, and then just before birth, it sees for a moment all the causes that led it to Devachan, and back to the life it is about to begin. And knowing it to be all just, to be the result of its own past life, it repines not, but takes up the cross again, and another soul has come back to earth. Let me summarize the core concepts of Source Theosophy that I have presented in the second part of this discussion. Besides the three fundamental propositions of unity, cycles, and hierarchical evolution, we have also explored four other ideas. The first is karma, or action, which is the impersonal law of universal harmony that operates on every level in nature, including the moral level, and renders us accountable for our actions. The second idea is reincarnation, which means rebirth or re-embodiment, and represents nature's mechanism for ensuring continued evolution. The third idea concerns the constitution of man. We are dual in nature. One part of us, our individuality, is spiritual and immortal and is called the higher self. The other part, our personality, is material and temporary and referred to as our lower self. The human quest is learning to subjugate our lower self to our higher spiritual nature. The final idea that was explored involved the after-death stages, in which the personality dissolves, allowing the individuality to absorb the experiences of that lifetime before reincarnating in another personality. Now in a moment, I'll discuss the implications of this worldview on our daily living and comment on the source literature available for study. Now I'd like to explore the ethics of theosophy. A theosophical worldview gives rise to a way of living, a system of ethics that is not based on sentiment, but on discovering and living according to the laws of nature. There are three important principles that arise in the teachings of the ancient wisdom that form a basis for the ethics of theosophy. The first is brotherhood as a fact of nature. The second is self-responsibility as the basis for spiritual growth and development. And the third is altruism as the ethic that should guide our conduct towards others. Let me enumerate on these points. Concerning the first principle, if the ultimate reality is the oneness of all life, then brotherhood is not a sentimental ideal, but as William Q. Judge has said, a fact of nature. Unless we are working for the progress and well-being of all of humanity, we work against nature's laws and generate destructive karma that we then have to face. We will continue to feel the harmful effects of selfishness or separation from the whole until we realize that we're all in this together and learn to work in harmony with all of life. Thus, the first object of the Theosophical Society is to form a universal brotherhood of mankind. This means doing all we can, based on our own conscience, for world justice and peace. Universal brotherhood is no idle phrase. Judge suggests that those who are selfish or indifferent must face the karma of the society that they're in. Regarding the second principle, while we may learn in life through the trial and error method, we do not grow spiritually until we accept responsibility for ourselves. Then we take charge of our own destiny and gradually discover nature's laws, and this will lead us to wisdom. However, growth occurs as we fulfill our duties and responsibilities in life. Whatever circumstances arise, that is the most important thing. Thus, in the Key to Theosophy, Blavatsky discusses the importance of duty. Duty is that which is due to humanity, to our fellow men, neighbors, family, and especially that which we owe to all those who are poor and more helpless than we are ourselves. This is a debt which, left unpaid during life, leaves us spiritually insolvent and morally bankrupt in our next incarnation. Theosophy is the quintessence of duty. In other words, spirituality is not necessarily gained on a mountaintop steeped in meditation, but from responsibly facing our problems and our obligations in life. The third principle is living altruistically, which is the true result of recognizing the unity of all life. Altruism means acting compassionately, and compassion is not emotion or sentiment, but the transcendental value of justice and love. In the wonderful book, The Voice of the Silence, Blavatsky eloquently phrases the nature of compassion. But stay, disciple, yet one word. Canst thou destroy divine compassion? Compassion is no attribute. It is the law of laws, eternal harmony, Alaya's self. A shoreless, universal essence, the light of everlasting right and fitness of all things, the law of love eternal,